Hello there, YouTube. I'm in Warner, and welcome to another episode of A Friendly Chat About. Unlike my other Friendly Chat About videos, this is in part a response, or rather joining in the fray thing on an issue that's arisen on YouTube recently. And this is because it's an issue that has directly affected me, directly affected my business, and directly affected my products, not just their sales, but people's variously slandering myself, my boss at Postmortem Studios, James Desborough, and various other people. And it's getting ridiculous, and it's about time somebody stood up and said something. So yes, this is the attack of the Prudes. I realise if you pick this up from it being a video response to one of you, James's videos, or if you've been directed here by any any other YouTube searches or anything like that, you don't know who the hell I am, so I thought I'd just give you a brief bit of context. I'm a writer. I have been since my first book was published in 2008. I've worked with Postmortem Studios in writing several spoof horror role-playing games. They're known as the Shadow World Angst series. We put the angst in because there is another game called Shadow World, and we don't want, and we've got to deal with them. And yeah, they're taking the mickey out of some rather pretentious arty games called The World of Darkness. Yes, this is tabletop role. If you want a difference between tabletop role-playing and computer game role-playing, I will link that in the below bar. It's not particularly important, so it'll be down there and right at the bottom of the list of the links. But anyway, the point is, when it comes to writing these games, a lot of the time you're dealing with adult themes. When you're talking about horror, it's inevitable. When you're talking about history, it's inevitable, particularly the 18th century, which is my speciality. When you're talking about a lot of science fiction, a lot of it. But the thing is, these games are not intended for children. The vast majority of them are not intended for children, or the ones that are intended for children are intended for a responsible adult to read the book and sort the children out and moderate things. It's just not aimed at kids, and that's got to be one of the stupidest arguments I've ever seen against putting sexual content in literature. Because really, I think I said this before in one of my Thoughts of No One in Particular, if you want to look at that series. I think it's the pilot episode, actually. But if you're stupid enough to have kids, they're your fucking problem, frankly. It's up to you to moderate what they see and what they don't see. It's just not the responsibility of people producing media for adults. It's not the responsibility for us who buys them. Anyway, they have to get bloody credit card to, and if they're nicking your credit card, you've got serious problems, mush. So, yeah, completely and utterly stupid. But I will go, I've gone off topic here. I will go on to that in more detail, explaining how this, it's not really a debate so much as the debate's already been had, but there's this bunch of reactionaries who want to reset the clock. But we shall go on to that in the following few sections. You probably noticed by my accent I am not the typical American YouTuber, because let's face it, the majority of people who are actually getting their faces on YouTube are American. And that comes with a lot of cultural baggage, regardless of whether you are in the mockable sort of massively stereotyped fundy right that we've come to see America as in recent years around the world. There is a lot of cultural baggage, and this is all to do with America's history. It's a combination of the fact that, firstly, a lot of American history involves cover-ups. I'm not saying that as a conspiracy theorist, I'm saying that as a historian. First of all, the Pilgrim Fathers did not flee religious persecution in the United Kingdom. The Pilgrim Fathers wanted to persecute people. They wanted to eradicate any form of Christianity that was not Puritanism. And they actually lynched I think she was a Quaker or a Baptist, I can't remember. And that was the turning point. King James was fed up with this shit. He was trying to establish some level of religious peace. And there were all sorts of problems in doing that because of the fact that there was a lot of anti-Catholic sentiment. There was this almost it's very convenient Catholic plot to kill him, and he was sitting on top of a powder keg, and he did not want to give power to a bunch of crazies. So he said, "Look, either you tolerate other Christians in this country, or you bugger off." And they chose to bugger off, and off they went to the New World and the emerging colonies there. After a few hundred years, some of the Puritans stayed in Britain, but they were a minority, to say the least. A minority that later achieved power, but a minority nonetheless. Later years, we had an additional problem thrown in, which was the fact that Britain had this really stupid policy called the Bloody Code, which I've written a book about, called Tough Justice, whereby most crimes were punishable by death. Now, the thing was that most of these death sentences weren't carried out. They were commuted to what we call transportation. Transportation was basically a form of exile. You were sent to one of the colonies. And the colony that got the most transported people until the American War of Independence, which is what I call it, and what sensible historians call it, until that point, we were sending thousands upon thousands of convicted criminals over there. And of course, these convicted criminals, they were probably only the petty sort. Pickpockets, thieves, con men in particular. But they were wily self-aware things, and they were sort of brought in by these religious fanatics and something. But I like to think that some of that sort of conniving and scheming has also infiltrated the cultural consciousness, because of the fact that you have figures in your history like Joseph Smith, who was a convicted con man and started a religion, exploiting the fanatics there. It's just a classic example. That, and of course, American history is stained in blood, to quote Joel Heston. Not exactly the best person to quote, but yeah, American history is awash with lots of blood and a lot of guilt with that. So in that guilt, you have all these combined together, all these factors, and indeed poverty, and also create this consciousness where you have a very sort of oversensitive mentality, which is very unhealthy. very unhealthy indeed, and it's to me that is the basis around why we are seeing a lot of extremists come out of that country. That and the fact that you don't have you have the sort of perfect breeding ground in all the amount of poverty and the amount of the least amount of fucks your politicians give about you. But yeah, that's how I see it as a cultural context, and of course I feel sorry for that. I feel sorry for all of you people who have resisted this cultural urge to be inbuilt, as it's built up through the centuries, to be oversensitive, to be judgmental. And I respect every American who's overcome that greatly, particularly the atheist Americans who I think, even though I'm a Christian myself, I think they are a terribly oppressed people. They've had so much shit just for the fact that they don't believe in God, which is just incredible in what purports to be a civilized country. Okay, I went way off topic there, and probably have annoyed a few people with that, but I thought it was important to establish that most, if not all, of the complaints I've seen of the things come from Americans of whatever stripe, whether they're secular radical feminists or religious fundamentalists. I have yet to see anywhere else on the planet complain. Seriously, I have yet to see anywhere else on the planet complain. I did have a brief problem when it came to clarifying exactly what my work was with one British person, but we cleared that all up, thanks Tel. Yeah, but this problem, as I see it, I've seen nothing. I've seen no real existence of it elsewhere. So that's why I decided to do that cultural context section. I hope it doesn't piss too many people off. Anyway, my experiences. Now, as if the experiences of, say, you, James, or people who are actually working in, like people like Divinity, who've been working in adult industries, weren't bad enough. To an extent, you can see some of the argument, although it's a bullshit argument. You can see some of the argument that there is some trafficking going on. There is this element of sort of financial coercion. But this is where the anti-porn crowd get ridiculous. And I mean totally fucking ridiculous. They are using these arguments to attack works with drawn artwork like mine, with just written like novels, written sort of sex scenes in them. I mean, I've heard of them picketing the worst sex award, which is a joke award. All authors dream of getting one at some point, but it's a joke award for the worst written sex scene in a novel in the year. And I've heard of anti-porn crowds picketing that award, and it's a novel. You don't see anything. It's all written down. Fuck's sake. And even with drawn images, like the one you've just seen, which was censored for the purposes of YouTube, but that woman does not exist. It was a product of the imagination of the artist. There was probably no model. I don't know um, how he did it, but he probably didn't really use a model as such. And yeah, it's not. Every time they start bringing up this, I just think of the classic anti-porn argument that came out back in the 18th century. This is towards the beginning of the 18th century, where things were still a little prudish, and it wasn't the grand farce that I celebrate. It wasn't quite the grand farce that I celebrate in my history books quite yet. And what I found really amusing was it involved one of my favourite books, Mole Flanders. Now, Mole Flanders was a controversial book at the time because of the fact, but it wasn't really about the sex. It was about the indictment of society, and that this essentially good character, Mole, was forced into thievery, conning, prostitution. She accidentally committed incest. It's a long story. All because of a horrible system that was in the 18th century. Around in the 18th century, it was a stunning indictment of society at the time, and a lot of it still holds up today. Daniel Defoe is a complete genius, and of course there is an element to which he was basically writing a novel to provide for people who wanted sort of red hot literature and were being censored. But and there was a great outrage at this book. But the really funny thing was when the British version of the anti-porn movement back then blamed an earthquake in Italy, where the book was illegal, on the release of Mole Flanders. Not only was the book illegal in Italy, Italy was Catholic, and therefore the group that were saying that this was an evil work weren't even backing the same religious team. So it was probably the stupidest anti-porn argument in the history of stupid anti-porn arguments. And if ever you have serious problems with these people, just bring that up. It has got to be one of the most hilarious moments of facepalm in history, and it is well worth bringing up. But yeah, that's a bit of a sort of historical sidetrack there. But essentially, my point is, when it's fiction, when it's drawn, when it's written, there's no excuse whatsoever. I mean, there's pretty much no excuse when it's film or photographs. But when you're talking about comics, when you're talking about pictures in role-playing games, when you're talking about written work, there is no issue. It's fantasy. And as so many books write in their opening disclaimers, which are annoying enough in themselves, that you have to write them. If you cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality, that's your problem, not ours. I mean, how many times... yeah, see, that is a direct quote from C.J. Carella, who wrote the role-playing game Witchcraft, which got a lot of controversy at the time from the Jack Chicks of this world. But it's essentially just a sort of tamer version of the World of Darkness. So it's not particularly satanic or malicious. It's just an interesting look at a kind of a secret world set up, a bit like the World of Darkness. Only, as I said, it's a lot tamer. But yeah. These people do not operate on reason and logic. That's where a lot of you are making your mistakes. You're expecting an appeal to reason to work. It's not going to. These people utterly have decided that they utterly despise this, and they will trot out these arguments, and they will make no sense. As I said, it makes no sense to me, or in fact to anybody else in the industry. Grimm's had this problem as well, and he's made this statement so many times, recently to PayPal, who were threatening to censor certain types of erotica. And that's another story entirely. I recommend you go and see Grimm's video on that. It is utterly awesome. It's an awesome bit of ponage, and he's taking on the world's pretty much only internet payment provider, because they've got a monopoly and nobody else does this, unfortunately. And winning, from what I hear today. So, yeah, anti-porn crowd cannot be reasoned with. The anti-porn crowd are utterly balmy. You just cannot reason with this kind of mentality, and it's a real shame. Well, there you go. As nonsensical and non sequitur as it was, there's my little viewpoint. I do realise that categories probably make no sense. I was going off on tangents, but that's just me. That's just how I speak. That's just how I think. And if you don't like it, you can fuck off. Anyhow, I will be leaving a lot of links in the as well as my usual links to my blog and to my Facebook. I will be leaving links to the channels of you, James, 1978, as he will always be. Despite no matter how many times you false flag him, he will still come up with different ways of saying he's going to stay you, James, 1978, and fuck you if you don't think so. He's done sterling work for the sadly, it's a cause of protecting the rights of creepy pervs like me everywhere. Yeah, he's done some sterling work, and on other issues as well. He's been in various flame wars, and I recently published his book, From the Mind of You, James, 1978, and really can't plug it enough. It is an awesome little thing. I will do a separate video as a sort of an editor's commentary on that, because it is so great. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Anyhow, other shout-outs. Hannibal, as he was Hannibal Barker, he's Hannibal the Victor. He's gone through a lot of channels too, and he really didn't deserve the shit he gets. He's an anthropologist, and he's really into, obviously, the whole basis around human interaction and culture, and people don't like the truth being told to them, and when it doesn't equate with what they've always accepted as true, and that causes him to get a sort of a maligned reputation that's completely undeserved. He is an excellent scientist and a damn good, fine human being too. Finally, we have Divinity. Divinity can give you an insider's view of the adult industry, and is a very interesting channel nevertheless. She's got some very strong viewpoints and has had some problems in the past with various peoples, particularly in this camp. And yeah, anything you can do to help with her various charitable things. I still have books here if she wants to auction them off. Just to let you know, Divinity. Also, shout out to Thing Too Cool for You, who has had similar problems with various things with the definition of feminist, and the fact that the anti-porn feminist has become, to many people, the definition of feminist, which is untrue. She's a sex-positive feminist, she's a moderate feminist, and takes it very seriously, which is fine by me. Yeah, so big lot of shout outs, big lot of channels to look up and subscribe. You're probably already subscribed to them anyway if you're subscribed to me, but every little helps. And yeah, this has been a fun little rant. I will return to talking about my actual work in the next episode with the commentary on James's book.